My name is Artur Tajber. I'm living in Kraków, Poland, and I was born not so far from Kraków, and I spent the longest part of my life in that city. I must say that I am a professor of the Academy of Fine Arts in Kraków at the moment. And I am also a dean of the newest faculty of the Academy. It's a faculty of intermedia. We established that faculty almost 10 years ago. It is a kind of experimental institution, which one of the most important pillars is a master studio of performance art. Of course, it's not devoted to performance art especially, but to the idea of intermedia, but we recognize the term, the notion of intermedia by the trace of thinking of Dick Higgins, for whom performance art was a part of intermedia, looking back to the 60s. So, for me it is quite important because before we established the faculty, I was engaged in art as, we may say, the activist, not only performance artist, but activist, who was freelance curator, organizer, and publisher. And the idea of performance art was ever linked for me with many other activities, social activities. So I suppose that performance art is not social itself as a practice, but is a part of the social practice. This, which is really important looking from today's point, I think is that Belfast and Northern Ireland, or maybe more generally Ireland as an island, is an important factor. In 80s, when we had really difficult situation in Poland because the martial law, because the military regime, and I think it was a decade which was the most difficult part of my life. I met two artists from Ireland, and we start a specific form of collaboration, exchanging art informations between Northern Ireland and Poland. My first trip after the decade, my first trip abroad, it was a trip to Northern Ireland. At the time I stayed about 2 months in the north, a few weeks in the south of Ireland, in the Republic. I met a lot of people. Some of them I know because the documentary materials I received before. So somebody's art I know before, but I met most of those people in person. And that so-called romance with Irish culture, it was a very important part of my activity, especially in the 90s and beginning of the 2000s. And so today it's changed a bit because I focus my attention on some other ideas in some other territories, especially when I started academic experiment. But being here, I ever feel myself as really rooted in that society. I suppose that looking from the private point of view, I have much more friends in Belfast than in Kraków. Maybe more students in Kraków than in Belfast, but more friends here than in Poland. Well, maybe not in Poland, but in my city. It's a very funny feeling. However, I like it. I like it, and I realize that it is going by that way, because I don't suppose coming here, I don't remember all those people I met before, but being here, I see that they are coming. They are coming, and there are more and more every day. Sometimes I have a problem to recognize all of them, but I feel here myself very familiar. So it is not only a private feeling, but it is a part of the basement of a kind of construction. Which built a kind of frame, a general frame of the activity we call art, looking from the outside. Looking from the inside, from the position of the author, from the position of the organizer, somebody who feels himself responsible for linking people, for example, or arranging some relationships. That type of frame, which has a physical aspect and human aspect also, is of the main importance, I think. I hear that people are speaking about some social or public aspects of art or performance art, and I suppose that the basement of such problem, it is a society of performance artists. I have a problem with the term public. Living only in Poland, because I don't want to speak about my external experience at the moment when I was traveling or working in other countries, but looking only from the Polish perspective, it is impossible to forget that our reality was changing. Each 10 years our political system was changing. And of course those changes before 81 was maybe less visible from the outside. But I was born in Stalinist times. I remember as a little boy, 1958, when that Stalinist period was finished by a kind of social revolt. And then I remember very well 68, which was somehow similar to 68 worldwide, but it was rooted in a completely different reality. And of course I was one of those people who was engaged in late 70s and beginning of 80s. I returned to Poland in 1980 from France just to take a part in a solidarity movement. And looking from that position, terms like public have no sense, because during my childhood or the time of my studies, the term public belongs to the state. And public space, the definition of public space, it was a synonym of the space belongs to the government, which was not the government in fact, but a party, a group of people, a kind of mafia people. So that time the notion or the term of private property had also completely different meaning. And the social life was realized inside our flats during the private meetings, but not understood in the context of private property. It was social. So all those meetings, all those meanings was changing their places all the time, going parallel to all the political, social and economical changes. There are many words of that kind which changed their meaning diametrically, and which which lose its sense because of a kind of devaluation in the social process. I'm absolutely sure that somebody who was born in a communist country, which was called a socialist country, for the end of his life, hearing the term socialism, have a completely different association in the terms of value than somebody who was born in a capitalist country. So I'm very sensible for all those shadows. And I suppose that when I am speaking about the presence of the artists, performance artists, in open urban space, for example, I am rather speaking about the activity which is out of cultural system umbrella. It is the difference which is the most important for me. And of course, if it is organized by the museum, well-established gallery, and advertised by posters, it is not a public activity for me. It is still a part of the art system. The real difference for me is in that the practice of the artist who is not announced as an artist is completely different in terms of communication than that type of existence which is proposed by the art institution, official art institutions. For me, performance is not temporary. It is quite important. I'm very engaged in a research program which is maybe not invented by me, because I continue a kind of practice I met but I interview my friends. By interviews, some other people, some other artists become my friends. I interview my friends who represent a similar practice and similar experience like mine. I started from the oldest generation of performance artists because I realized that they are slowly vanishing, and I realized that it is very important.
Who's your master in Poland of performance art for you? Who's your master?
There was no master, because when I started to perform, there was no performance art. I am maybe one of the youngest who start to perform as first performance artist. Who is the older? In the terms of the age, but not in the terms of the practice. It's like Zbyszek Warpechowski, Jurek Bereś, who died 4 years ago. For example, the oldest performance artist, Jan Świedziński, he started to perform 1 year later than me. It's quite funny, because there was no performance art before. I started to perform in mid-70s.
So it was a part of art practice, but without the name of...
Of course, somehow, but we may go much more far back, to Leonardo, for example, but there are two different ways of thinking. It is something completely different if we have, that conscious that our activity is changing the paradigm. If it is a part of another kind of practice, like painting practice or three-dimensional activities, building something, it may look very the same, but the consciousness which towards that practice is completely different. We must differ it from the other we must to feel that separation, we must to now, because each kind of artistic practice has also a kind of political context, but not in the terms of the high politics, but also of that politics which goes together with our thinking when we are dividing the reality, analyzing the fragments. So it is like a contest between sculpture and painting during the Renaissance times. What is a better form of art? Which practice is a matter of art? Like in correspondence between Leonardo and Michelangelo. It was a polemic.
It's impossible to answer.
It's impossible,
No,
but
wait.
you know, they announce that they represent different positions, different disciplines, and for them it was important to explain to each other the difference. So it has a political aspect. It is a politics, cultural politics maybe, internal cultural politics. So I think that performance in its clear form as a separate form of art practice was born in between the end of 60s and mid 70s. And it was a process of evolution. For many it was the same as happening, as body art and so on. For the others it becomes to be slowly something a bit different, more significant. And of course the position of today generation is completely different, because they have that option to study performance art as something which exists. And of course sometimes it has the same value, but that position to the notion which is created, which is in the process of defining itself, it's completely different. So for me, performance, the characteristic of the performance is rather related to the form of living. So the form of performance is not defined by the form of the spectacle when we are meeting the audience, but rather the form of the living of the artist, of the person who is the author of the performance. And by that way, the spectacle, it is only a kind of introspection. It is not a spectacle we create for the people, like in the theater, or not. Yeah. And also it is not like a concert, for example. We announce all the songs, we will try to improvise, for example. It is just a kind of introspection. We are opening the window to show what is inside, but it is still going on. It is a kind of much longer process. And it is rather a process of forming our own life and how we'll do it, how our decisions are related to the reality. And it is a form of exchange. We are showing a part of our life. And by that way, it is not temporary.